Hey there, this is Ill Factor from beatacademy.com. I want to share some music production tips and techniques while recreating the beat you can hear in Dua Lipa's Levitating. So, let me show you the final result. All right, now this breakdown is going to be a little bit different in the fact that the majority of the plugins I'm going to be using featured in this video are made by Waves. I also want to take this time to thank all of you for recommending me to do this breakdown. I've gotten tremendous amounts of requests to do this, so thank you. And you can comment below with more requests that you'd like to see in the near future. Also want to take this time to remind you, if you're looking for professional guidance in helping you take your next step forward with producing your own music, visit beatacademy.com, and I would love to help you in any way that I can. So let's go ahead and start with the drums. I'm going to start by creating the drum pattern using an acoustic drum kit. And for that, I'm going to be using Addictive Drums 2 by Excellent Audio. And we're using the vintage dry kit. It's one of my favorite kits to use. And so let's go ahead and check out the pattern. Now, it's pretty straightforward, but one thing I want to encourage you to do when you're drawing out your patterns, especially if you're step sequencing, if you're drawing them in, such as double clicking and then inserting a note value there, you want to be sure that you're adjusting the velocities. And especially with acoustic drum kits, this is really going to help give you a more realistic performance. So I'm doing that here with my hi-hats. You can notice that this first hi-hat, the velocity is somewhat all the way up, and then the next one is a little lower. And that's going to help create a nice organic feel to the hi-hats. And that goes with other instruments as well. So you might want to adjust some of the kicks. And so you're not just getting this stiff sound going all the way through, or more so a stiff performance. So now that we have the acoustic drum pattern, let's go ahead and shape the tone. So I'm going to start by using the mdmx overdrive plugin by Waves. And here's where we're going to get some nice grit to it. You're going to see throughout this breakdown that saturation plays a big part in just gluing things together. And I love just using saturation and adding that kind of color and harmonics to a lot of things. So I'm going to dial the mix down. I don't want too much crunch, but just enough to give it character. And then one of my favorite plugins to use is the DBX 160, especially on acoustic drum kits, whether you're recording them or virtual kits like this. This really brings a lot of that power back to the smack. So here is the DBX 160. I'm not trying to squash it completely, but I do want to make the drums a bit tighter. So that sounds like a good setting. And there's loads of features on here that are really cool, but usually it's so simple. Just dial the threshold back. It sounds great. And then move on. So then right after that, let's go ahead and take some of the low end out, because I'm going to go ahead and beef that low end with an additional kick drum. So I'm using the REQ4 for that. That's cool. And then I'll go ahead and start to layer that initial drum groove with a kick and snare here. And so that is a kick that we have here, and we've got a saturator here from Ableton Live, and then we have just like an old school nice snare with the clap combined to it. So that's a nice layer right there, and that's definitely going to accent the foreground groove. And then we're going to layer this with another clap. I'm actually using the same drum pattern, the same drum bus from a previous video that I did on my channel called Real Groove featuring Dua Lipa and Kylie Minogue. But here is the clap alone. Because when I listen to the Dua Lipa reference, that clap is just nice, fat, and juicy, and definitely has a nice wide feel to it. So we've got that, and then let's add a drum break on top of that just to help glue things together. If you find yourself like, recreating patterns or trying to recreate an acoustic drum pattern, but find that it's just missing something, I want to encourage you to incorporate loops in there of a visual drum, tuck in a drum loop here and there to create the texture that you're probably looking for. So here's a drum loop. Just a little EQ here to take away the low end. And let's combine that with the rest of the drums. And then let's just add a shaker loop. Now, one thing I'm doing here with the shaker that creates a really nice sense of a groove is side chaining the shaker. So I'm gonna have the kick drum be the source of my side chain. So every time the kick drum is being heard, the shaker ducks out of the way. And that's that concept of the side chain. And I like doing this with shakers and tambourines and stuff like that, because when it feels too straightforward, it just becomes a little stiff. And side chaining these auxiliary percussion elements make a really good way of just creating that groove as if you were really following along with the overall pattern. It just accents at the right place, and it feels great. So grouping all these drum elements together created a drum bus. And that's what we have here. So I'm going to start with using another mdmx, and this is the Screamer plugin. Again, the saturation is a great way to glue things together. So we've got a little bit of this Screamer distortion. And it's amazing that when you hear some of the gain and the saturation happening to it, you're like, it's very subtle, but when you take it off, that's when it's really noticeable. So I like what it's doing there. And then I'm going to be using the SSL channel plugin to, warm this up. So I'm going to use the low pass here, right? And then also take away some of that low end by using the high pass. Using, when you take away some of the high end, it ultimately makes things a lot warmer, and warmer equals farther back in the mix, right? So right about there is fine. And just some minor EQ, a lot more in the low end just to boost some of that beef that I want from the kick. And some compression here with the dynamic section here. And then next, I'm going to be using the Infected Mushroom Pusher plugin here. And this is just a great way to add just dynamic excitement, especially with drums. I love using this plugin. So you're focusing on adding some of the low mids, some of the lows, highs, and then I'm going to widen up by increasing the stereo image here. And just increasing the push a little bit. So this is without it. And then adding some texture just to round everything out. We're going to be using the Abbey Road Studio Vinyl plugin. All right, so now let's go ahead and focus on recreating the bass. And I have to say, whoever was playing bass on this record just absolutely killed it. It's gonna be hard to kind of recreate the same type of feel and vibe, but we can get pretty close. And I'm gonna be using the Bass Slapper plugin by Waves. The reason why I'm going with this is because there's a lot of the nuances that go into recreating that type of feel, especially when focusing on using the slaps and the mutes and slides and things like that. So this plugin is really great for that. And not to mention it has the onboard effects and a lot of the cool features we'll walk you through. But the most important aspect of getting the vibe and feel just right is the way you're using a lot of the mutes and the velocities and the way you're programming the bass. So here is the bass riff. So what I meant is that a lot of these notes here that we're seeing, you have a couple notes in the lower octaves that are focusing on some of the bass mutes. And these are, it's like the unheard but felt part of the bass lines, and they're so important. Because if we went ahead and just muted these parts, if I deactivate them and just had the bass melody notes alone, now let's reactivate those notes. I mean, big difference. And so you gotta be mindful of some of the nuances. And if you're not familiar with it, just pay close attention to just some bass players and you'll notice how a lot of the rhythm that's happening isn't necessarily the notes that are played, but the notes that aren't being played with the muting and the movement and of the hands that's being picked up by the pickups on the bass. So this is really cool. I'm using a lot of these mutes and stops, and some of these notes here trigger the octave, especially when we're going to this note here. So when I press this note, it'll transmit this note to the whole octave. And the plugin itself has some really amazing features on it. So you can balance out the level of the amp, choose a different type of amp setting here, or just a direct feed. You can choose the different fretboard. So I have it here, and that all actually plays a big role into the type of sound you're gonna get. And then there's some pre-effects here, and so some compression. That's really all I have right now is just a little bit of that compression. And then right after that plugin, I'm gonna be using the CLA bass plugin just to shape the tone a little bit. Might wanna give a little bit more chorus. See what it sounds like with the drums. And now let's add some sidechain compression, similar to what we did with the shaker. And I'm gonna determine the, let's say, drum rack here and choose the kick drum to be the source of the sidechain. Now for the main synth in the chorus, I'm gonna be using the Waves Element synth plugin. And so we want something a bit bright, that's nice and wide. So I'm gonna start by heading over to oscillator 1 and 2 and focusing on using a sawtooth. So the way this is laid out, you can mix between oscillator 1 and 2. So let's focus on 1 first. And let's make the second oscillator an octave higher. So we'll go ahead and choose this. I want a little bit more, I want a lot more of the higher octave and blend it a little bit with the lesser, a little less of the lower octave. Now what we're gonna do is detune one oscillator slightly, and that'll help create some width. So I'm gonna go to the fine tune knob here and just adjust that. Now let's add some noise to this. And a little bit of ring modulation. Now here we have our cutoff, so we'll lower that a little bit. Okay, and then we'll shape the actual body of the sound over here, the VCA. That seems good there. And let's add some distortion to color up the sound. And then this is where it really takes shape, and that's the onboard chorus that's in the element. So let's add some reverb to create some dimension and space. And a little bit of delay. Now I like the onboard EQ because we'll take the low end out just a little bit. All right, let's see what that sounds like with everybody else. All right, next we have this funky guitar riff happening, and I've just kind of cut up and pieced together some guitar riffs that I had laying around on the hard drive. And we're gonna be using the CLA guitar plugin just to give it some texture and space. I love the spreader on this plugin. So that's cool. And then we'll use the Renaissance EQ to just give a little bit of that mid duck. And again, I'm side chaining this. So we'll go drum rack and we'll use the kick. See what that sounds like with everybody else. So I just panned the guitar slightly to the left, and I want to use another instrument that's going to help accent that same type of vibe, but not the same texture as the guitar. And for that, I'm going to be using the clavinet plugin by Waves. So let's check that out. Let's put them together. And I love the wah on here because that's what really gives us some character. Put that back on. And then just to kind of glue things together with a nice low mid body, I'm using the Electric 88 from Waves as well. And we have the tremolo set on. And the reason why I've got the tremolo on, because it's just adding some really cool movement while it's in the back. Let's hear what it sounds like with everybody else. And then just to tie everything together, we have that nice string note being held throughout the whole chorus. And for that, I'm using the Native Instruments Contact factory library string patch here. But yeah, I want to color it up a little bit. So I'm going to use the Meta Flanger by Waves, one of my favorite flange plugins. And now let's go ahead, check out what it sounds like with everybody together. Now on the actual master tube bus, just to kind of help glue everything together really quickly, I'm using the Mixcentric here. And so I'll take that off. And then I've got just an L2 just to kind of bring up and give a little bit more gain on the master bus. So Here's without the mix-centric. I mean, and it's as straightforward as it gets. It's just one knob, and you just turn it up till you like the way it feels and sounds, and there you go. And then just the L2 to just give a little bit of limiting and help boost the overall volume. Well, hey, thank you so much for watching this video. And as my gift to you for watching, I'd love to send you a sample pack loaded with construction kits, loops, one-shots, and these are sounds that you can use in your projects absolutely royalty-free, and they're yours free just by clicking the link below in the description box. I'll also give you the stems and this Ableton Live set, so if you wanted to rewatch this video and follow along, feel free to do so. You can access those by clicking the link below in the description box or by visiting beatacademy.com/pack. Hey, if this video was helpful for you, be sure to hit the thumbs up, like it, and subscribe so that YouTube in its algorithms will continue to show you more videos that I'll be putting out soon in the future. Also, let me know in the comments what you would like to see further up ahead, whether it's another breakdown or just certain things that you're struggling with when it comes to music production. I'd be happy to help you out in any way that I can. You can also visit beatacademy.com if you're looking for that professional guidance with getting better at producing your own music. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.